Okay. Hello everyone. Hi. Sorry about that. Right. So I want to cover a few things today. Well, I didn't look up, so I looked up just now. One is single responsibility, because we're diving into the realms of dealing with multiple objects within battleships, and we really need to focus on each object. And the second is class methods, just because battleships is a really good way to demo. Because I think we covered class methods slightly last week, where you have the self methods inside the class. But I want to show in battleships a nice way of doing that to make the code a little bit more readable. So first of all, I want to talk about single responsibility. I'm going to throw out the questions. Does anyone know what single responsibility is? Or what it... just anyone throw out what their thoughts on single responsibility.
We're trying to make the methods more individual for each task they have.
Yes, that's correct. Within methods, the methods should always have, be doing one thing. They should never be doing multiple things. So if your method names are do this and this, that's probably wrong. Your methods will always be doing one very small thing. That's a part of single responsibility. Anyone else with any thoughts on single responsibility? How about within classes?
Same thing.
Yeah. So a class should always be responsible for one thing and one thing only. It should never be responsible for two things. And another way of thinking that, Uncle Bob or Bob Martin said, a class should always have one reason to change, so never two reasons to change. So what's an example of a reason for two reasons to change? So has anyone looked at the MVP of battleships that Sam presented yesterday? I'm trying to find this. Like that. So the MVP of battleships. Okay, for some reason I can't. Looks like minimal viable product, and we have this ship C2 we're only creating a ship. What's C2? Sorry? And the board now wasn't in the realms of sort of C2. We would have to go and change the way ship is created and crafted, because we've changed the board is no longer a dimensional sort of C2. We've got to go and change the ship. So this is probably breaking single responsibility. So now the responsibility of the ship is actually dependent quite a lot on the board. Hi, Sam. Yeah, sorry.
It's important. You've got to let the code out and let it become a part.
Yeah. Okay. And you should be doing this for yourself. So no matter what code I write, I'll always go back and make sure all of the solid principles apply to it, and single responsibility is the easiest one to break, because it's so you can write code really quickly by breaking a single responsibility, but once you break it, you have to go in and sort of like just implement that rule, just to make sure that your code is clean and has single responsibility, and that really ties into the values of software. So Uncle Bob said there's two values of software. I can't remember what the second value is. The second value is, do you remember what the second value is? The second value is a software should fulfill the current. Gabe, do you know?
So I don't know. Who's Uncle
Bob Martin. I'll always refer to Bob Martin. He's one of he wrote the book Clean Code and various other books. He's been the developer for God knows how many years. Do you know where he's worked historically?
Not off the top of my head, no. But he's like the go-to, one of the go-to guys for anything to do with software.
He goes by Uncle Bob as well.
Uncle Bob is his sort of like computery name that he refers to. Sorry, I thank you for asking that, because I just assume everyone knows a bit like Santa Claus to me. The second rule is a piece of software should meet the current needs of the current user in the current situation. That's rule number 2. But the first value is that it should be easily maintainable and easy to change. So to make software easy to change means that it has to have single responsibility. It's so much easier to change software when it's responsible for one thing. If it's responsible for a couple of things, it makes it really hard to change, because you have to go and change with a bunch of different classes. So if you want to make your software easy to change, you really have to give it a single responsibility. So I kind of want to sort of tear this apart a little bit and just get rid of this completely. I don't want anywhere in my ship for it to even know about a board. The ship shouldn't know about a board. When you create a car, you don't say to that car, you're going to only be based in Texas or wherever it's going to be. That car is just made to drive. Everything about that car is responsible for the driving of that car. Where it happens to be is down to the user and where they want to take it afterwards. So I think this is probably a bad thing. Maybe we should put this into responsibility of the board or the game. Yes.
So are you saying that it's better to create many classes with less methods than less classes with more methods?
I'll say many classes with less methods, if
Okay.
that. Yeah. Would you agree with that? And do you have anything to add on single responsibility?
Not yet.
Yeah, in principle, it sounds very easy. It's only responsible for one thing, but in reality, it's actually quite hard. So you find yourself creating more classes than you'll need to. So is the ship, responsible for this? Probably not.
Yesterday, Sam said that he feels the ship is pointless if he doesn't have a location. So that's why he felt like the location should belong to the ship.
So maybe the ship should know where it is, and be able to sort of query that somehow. So if you think of a current ship, does a current ship in the sea right now know where it is? Yes, but what it might do is actually it might go to an external device like a GPS unit and say, where am I? Because it will only know where it is based on everything else around it. Kind of where it is doesn't make any difference unless you know where the surrounding things are to it. So maybe that's the choice of a GPS module or something along those lines.
I was just going to say, is there sort of a question that works in many scenarios sort of ask your class, like, are you doing this or something so that we can apply it to, I don't know, I'm sorry, that question doesn't make sense, but like a sort of a standard question that will apply to a lot of classes that can simplify what its responsibility is? Because I think I would struggle with knowing what responsibility goes where. You have that debate all the time. Like, does the ship know where it is, or does the GPS function?
I think it's quite hard to sort of just say where you are in the world. It's much like it's us. It's quite hard for us individuals. I can tell you things about me, but I can't tell you exactly where we are in the universe or with any real confidence. So within the realms of me, I know what's going on. So it's quite easy to say from inwards of what a ship is, all the components of a ship. Anything outside of that is the job of the outside components. So what is the ship in? The ship is probably inside the board, so the board should know where it is. Where the ship is. It's quite hard to know where you are outside of a bigger picture. You look a bit confused.
I'm not done.
Okay. Yeah, but yeah, it's quite a hard question to answer. But generally, keep everything self-contained. So a ship is just responsible for the things that are inside the ship. So it knows if it's sunk or if it's not sunk, because it's the state within inside the ship, or it knows the size of itself. And that's pretty much it, really. Anything else, maybe the board should know where it is, and so on. And the board should know how many ships are inside it. A ship should know how many other ships are out there. Why would it want to know? So I'll try and code up an example of a ship, the way I think a ship should look. And I've built the most basic template. I always like to start fresh with my examples. So this is brand new. There's nothing inside either of these classes. I'm going to split screen here. Layout. I'm never going to do it. Nope, not going to do it. I just, I use so many different editors. I don't ever want to learn the commands for them. Right. So for a test, I'm going to require ship. Describe and break a whole bunch of things, but I just want to make sure this is breaking what I wanted to break. We haven't got this. That's good. It knows how big it is. We've got this ship.new. So how big is this ship?
3 spaces.
Sorry? 3 spaces. Okay, so how can I make this particular ship 3 spaces? on initial or on creation.
Initialize it. Yeah.
Initially, yeah. So
Asking for creation, like a creation length.
so ship.length. Okay, so we expect ship.length to equal, what's it going to equal with its length? 3. Okay. So how can we create this ship with 3? It's going to fail until it hasn't got a length of 3. So I'm going to create that length. It's going to be nil. How can I create this with 3? Initialize equals. So it knows that this has a length of 3. So that's just basic ship. Basic ship has a length of 3. What's another ship and its length that you probably might have been thinking about and dealing with? 1. What kind of ship is that? I really don't know the names of ships.
The one test ship.
Is it a rowboat or a?
It's not actually the game itself.
Starts at 2, and that's like the patrol ship. Okay, I think patrol, maybe submarine as well. It knows that a submarine is 2. Expect we're going to create a new submarine equals ship.new expect marine dot length to equal 2. So how can we create this with 2 now? Because this is going to be 3. It's going to say 1 to 2. We've got 3 because it's just a normal ship. What can we do to make this 2? Yeah. Where do we pass in the argument? On creation? So we can set the length equals 2 after it's been created.
Different ways if we want to have the possibility to change the length afterwards. We would possibly length.
I'm going to say we don't want to change it afterwards. We should never want to change it.
Then I would put submarine ship.new and then 3.
Yeah, it feels right to do it on creation. Just because when you've got a ship in the real world, you never add an extension to a ship. It'd be structurally harder to do than it would be to create, just create a new ship from scratch. So you could say, create it with 2. It's going to fail. It's going to say we've got the wrong number of arguments, so we can pass this and say this is the length of the ship, and this is going to go here. So it's going to break this one because we need to pass in what that's going to be. Okay, so we could just say here, haven't got 1, equal to 3. Everyone's happy. So by default, a normal ship is going to be 3. If we pass in an argument, it can be a size of whatever we want it to be. I'm sorry? Have I moved it? Oh, I'm sorry. Is that okay? I'm going to get rid of this size. This size here. Can we see that now? Okay, so by default, if we just make a normal ship, like so, it's got a length of 3. If not, we can pass in an argument, and that will be the size of the ship. Is anyone confused by anything, or is anyone not like anything that they're seeing here?
Don't you instead of calling the ship like submarine, you put out like some kind of name attribute, like just an attribute right there?
Well, it's to say create new and then pass in submarine, and it'll be able to read that.
Yeah, I don't know. Probably that is just overcomplicated things.
No, I kind of like where you're going with that, because right now ship.new2 doesn't really tell us submarine. It's just saying 2. And what is 2? Sorry? Length. But from this side, do we understand that 2 is the length? We don't. So things like this are generally frowned upon when coding. So we've got ship.new2. From the outside world, if I was seeing this from another class without looking in the ship class, I wouldn't know what 2 is. I would have to go to the ship class to see that I've called it length. And this is bad. This is what's called a magic number, and we see magic numbers everywhere in coding. You pass in something, what does that mean? And you have to go to the class. It's quite frustrating that if I'm in some sort of class, like a game class, I would have to go to the ship class to find out what that magic number meant. So it's frowned upon. Try not to have magic numbers floating in without explicitly saying what they are. So I want to play with. Oh, sorry.
I was going to say, you should just make the equals colon and then be length 2 in the argument.
Yeah, so we could do what we did with Boris bikes with the capacity. So you can have a hash, a sort of key value pair, say in size 2, and have all of these options being passed in. So we could have something like length. Jesus. You can pass in that, and then here you can treat this like a hash and get the key value pairs, and so on. And it still reads pretty ugly. So ship new, length 2, and we've still got the same problem, right? What is length 2? What does that mean to us? And does that necessarily mean a submarine? We don't know. We know that length 2, here we've called it submarine, but it doesn't really mean it is a submarine. So it fixes the problem a little bit. It makes that magic number go away, but it poses a few other questions like what does it mean to have length 2? So what I really want to do is I want to use class methods, which I introduced to you last week, to create a new ship, which means a little bit more. So I want to say create a ship of a submarine, like so. And this submarine is going to have the length of 2. And I can probably even get rid of this, saving it as an instance variable. I'll leave it for now. So I'm going to run the test again. We're going to get a failing error message saying we don't know what this method submarine is. And it says it on the, we don't have this method submarine for the ship class. So how do we create a class method of submarine?
Define submarine length.
Sorry?
Define submarine length, whatever length you want.
Define submarine. Is that all? I just want to fix this. Yes, I just want to fix this one issue that we're having now, undefined method submarine. To fix this one issue, we have to do def self. It's a class method. It's from the class. So now we have that, and we haven't got a method length for nil class. So
what was the error of giving the output self?
It will still say undefined method.
Okay,
Submarine.
because if you go into capital ship, that's it.
Yeah. Is everyone okay with that? So we need this method submarine on the class, not an instance of a class. To create a method on the class, we do self.submarine. So this method is called before it's been initialized. So inside here, what we can do is we can call the new method, which is on every class, and pass in any argument we want. So 2, for example. So putting all of that logic inside the class. So now if I do ship.submarine, it's going to call this method submarine on the class, which is going to call the method new on the class again, this time passing in that magic number, which has a little bit more meaning. Now it's inside the class, and it's going to create a new ship called submarine. So ship.submarine is going to return a submarine. So likewise, I can go it knows that a is it battleship or cruiser? What's that called? Is it called cruiser? Aircraft, there we are. Aircraft carrier has a length of 5. Right, so we can write some one line now. Ship dot aircraft carrier to equal 5. We got undefined methods of aircraft carrier. Going on. So using class methods here, we can actually make our code on this side a lot more readable. So ship.aircraft carrier is going to create a new aircraft carrier which automatically has the length of 5, and so on. And we're pushing all of that responsibility into the class now to create an aircraft carrier, and this will choose what size an aircraft carrier is. We could extract these rules and maybe have a key value pair constant up here called sizes or something along those lines, and say submarine 2, and so on, just so you can reference that based on what we called. But that would be getting a little bit too advanced. Whereas right now, I like this for now. It's a good where we are within our iteration. Do you have anything to add on this?
No, I think I agree with you. Eventually you would put the numbers into an array or a hash or a constant like you have done. But,
yeah.
That's probably an optimization that you would do.
Yeah, exactly. So right now this is a good step. Later on I might go away, have a good weekend, go for a few drinks, then come back and be like, what are all these weird numbers that I've got here? 2, 5, 3. It wouldn't really mean much to what I've got going on here. If you wanted to get slightly meta-programming, you can do puts method. When I run this, notice I've put the name of the method that I've called here, so __ method. So I could, if I really wanted to play around and make things a little bit messy, I could use the name of the method that I've called to reference a hash to find the length of a submarine. But that would be a little bit too clever, and you want to make your code as readable as possible. But I could just go off and reference the size of what a submarine is meant to be inside this method here. So does everyone see why we're doing this? The code's a little bit more readable than we had before. Rather than passing in just a magic coordinate or a magic size, we're now passing in the name of the ship that we want to create. But later on I might want to sort of move these numbers elsewhere. So what else is a ship responsible for? It can knows the maximum number of hits. Yes, so it's I guess the maximum number of hits is its length. So I think we've already got that in there. But just say yeah, it can be hit.
So you could be breaking single responsibility. Let's say you just had the ship and then only had it be like sunk ? And then it was like the game told it when it was sunk. Like it didn't care about it. So the ship is either it's good or it's not. But would that be breaking single responsibility to have the game, like, or some other class telling it now you're sunk, but the other class is keeping track of the hits?
I would say so, yes.
Okay, so you want the hits to be counted in.
Let's extend on that slightly. So if the game, for example, what would the game have to know that ship is sunk?
Like where hits have been, the location of the ship.
So it needs to know if the ship's been hit. So it needs to it needs to know information about that ship, when really the ship should know the information about the ship.
Okay, but like earlier, you're saying the ship should know its location.
Yeah.
Right. The board knows its location. So the board could like know that the location of each location of the ship has been hit, and then tell the game knows the ship.
There could be a way to calculate it. Using some sort of function to say, find out all of these methods, all of the places that have been hit. Now go and find out all the places of the ships, if there's a crossover, and there's nothing, it would be quite complicated, when really you could just keep, every time a ship receives a hit, it will keep doing that until it knows it's sunk. Because the ship is automatically, it should know if it's sunk or not. And a good way to find out is if it's been hit. So right now it's really testable if we say a ship can be hit. If that hit count corresponds to the size count, then it's sunk. And it's really nice. The ship is quite functional in what a ship should be. It doesn't have to be on a board now. It doesn't have to be in a game to be sunk. This could go into another game. I can't think of another game that takes ships and sinks, but it could go into another game and it'll be perfectly functional.
I just want to extend on what Steve said, is that you could do exactly what you said and take responsibility of knowing that the ship's been hit out of the ship and put it into the game. And if you experiment with doing that, you'll then find that the game is breaking the single responsibility principle. So that responsibility has to go somewhere. And as you move your design around and you play with your design, you sort of settle on who's going to take responsibility for which part of the game. And just through experience, we know that the ship, it ends up with the ship being responsible for knowing that it's hit. But play with it, try it, and you'll always find out that there's a responsibility somewhere that somebody has to take.
Mm-hmm. So I've intentionally done this now, only because I want Ben to talk a little bit more. So I'm going to run this. So I'm going to hit the ship, hit it with an exclamation mark, and then I'm going to say, ask the ship how many times have we been hit. And I'm going to run this. How many times have we been hit? So how do I fix this? Yeah, so I create this method, hit, bang, and I'm going to do a slight segue now. Everyone's okay with this reason I've done that, but I want to pass over to Ben to talk about bang.
Bang methods. What does everybody feel about the bang method? Can somebody tell me why you might or might not use a bang on hit?
Is it, if I remember correctly, isn't it like bang is signifying a change of state?
Okay, yeah, anyone else?
Is it the fact that you shouldn't call that method in that state, it should be used by, it shouldn't be, you wouldn't normally use hit, so should permanently alters the value, bang, not convention.
So I think that the exclamation is used in different ways in different contexts. So if you look at like string methods in Ruby, for example, you would have something like sub and gsub, which will return you a new string with the results of the substitution. Or there's a bang method, which will actually change the target of the invocation itself. So it will change the string that you call it on. Now the reason that there's a bang method, the reason it works like that is because it's often convenient when you're mutating something like a string to not change the original string, because some other part of the program might be relying on that string, yeah? And by changing it, you might break some other part of the program. So the exclamation, the bang method, is provided so you can change the actual string. The thing is by changing the string, you haven't just changed the internal state of the string, you've changed the entire concept of what that string is, because it's not the string it was anymore. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, you're no longer cool.
Oh yeah, well I never was. So I had my momentary coolness. So those two strings are completely different now. So by using that mutator, I've completely changed the entire identity of that string. When we're hitting the ship, we're not changing the complete idea of the ship. We're simply mutating its state by saying it's been hit. So by using a bang method, it's a signal to developers that when you use this method, something dangerous potentially is going to happen. There's nothing dangerous about hitting the ship. That's just the normal part of the way we want to interact with that ship. Do you see what I mean?
What's an example of something dangerous?
So, for example, when you go into Rails, and if any of you have ever had a play with Rails, there's a save method, for example, on an object, and it has two versions. One has a bang and one doesn't. Very much like in a string, you have a gsub and a gsub bang. When you call the bang method of save, if the object is invalid, like if it's a person and they've got no name, for example, then Rails will throw an error. If you call it without the bang method, it won't throw an error. It will just return false to say that the object hasn't saved properly. Yeah. So that's one example. However, if you use data mapper, which you will later on in the course when we do Sinatra, data mapper behaves in a completely different way. If you call save bang on data mapper, it will save the object without validating it at all. So those two frameworks use that bang method in two completely different ways. So really the bang method is there to say, if you're going to call this method, be sure you understand what you're doing, because it could have dangerous implications to the state of your object. In this instance, calling hit is just it's just a normal part of our interaction with the object. So therefore it oughtn't to have a bang method. That's my...
Yeah, and the other one is that this hit is quite a destructive word, so if you're hitting it, and it's quite nice for dramatic effect when reading your code to say ship.hit. So it reads quite nicely, and you want to make our code readable, and it is changing the state. However, as Ben said, we're changing the state in a way that we want to change it. It's going to be changed that way. We haven't got a hit without a bang and a hit with a bang. So there's no nicer way of hitting it. So it's optional, and it's completely up to you. So don't feel pressured to do it. no one's going to penalise you for doing it, but very rarely you'll see a hit method for something that's changing it in quite a predicted way. So we're going to hit our ship without a bang.
Very often there will be, yeah, and the two will have there'll be a nuance as to why there's two methods.
So I'm going to just run our spec to make sure. Okay, so next one is I haven't saved this. Okay, so we haven't got method hits. So now I'm going to define method hits. And just to clarify, the convention of the bang, hopefully we've said it's a little bit hazy, but the Boolean convention with the question mark, that's 100% in stone. If it's returning true or false, always have a question mark, just in case there's any doubt with that. So we are no longer doing this. So what I could do, I can make this return 1. This is called sliming. So we know you should always do the bare minimum to pass a test. So for this, I would have to create another test to increase it again to prove it wrong. So I've just sort of like put in 1 just to pass the test. I've written the bare minimum. I know I'm going to be writing actual code to pass this, so I should do it properly. So I'm sort of sliming myself just to make myself write another test for the hell of it. You can go down that path forever when really I know kind of what I need to do. So I probably want to have a hits equal to 0, and when you have my attribute reader of hits, just say at hits. Is it plus equals 1 or plus plus?
Plus equals.
We've been writing JavaScript all week. Oops, now I've registered a hit. So now I should know if a ship is sunk. It should know if a ship is sunk. It ship. I want to create a ship of only 1. So for this, I'm probably going to create equals ship.new 1. So it's going to be a new instance of a ship. I can hit it at the exact same time. Do you have a question? Stretching. Okay. I take stretches and scratching your heads very literally. So I've hit it at the same time. Now I expect my oh, this is going to return 0. So when I hit it, I should really return itself afterwards. Are you right? Oh no, it'll just be equal to 1 or 2 or whatever else gets put out here. You're correct. Hit.
Be careful when you're typing ship and hit.
Don't make a typo.
How many times are you going to mistype that?
To equal. Or I could just go it should know if a ship is sunk or is not sunk. Just to naturally get there. So and just to highlight, here we're getting undefined method sunk for this object, which is an object of ship. Whereas before, when we had the class method that was failing, it said ship.class or ship::class. Should know if a ship is sunk when hit. I'll leave it at that for now. I could change the wording of that to say about the length, but I might get there naturally. So ship equals new 1. I can probably remove that line from here. Ship dot sunk equal true. And of course I'm going to have to hit it to sync that ship. So ship. Okay, same course. So that's probably not right. Don't need that. So, awesome. So the hits.
Pull that over again.
Sorry. On my just to give. I'm saying if it's sunk, if the hits is, I could say greater than or equal to, on the safe side. And that means my ship is sunk. I know this is slightly the right logic, but I might want to make a slightly bigger ship and hit it once to make sure it's not sunk, and hit it the amount of times. I'm quite confident in my logic here, but it's nice to have sort of like a well-surrounded safety net just to make sure all cases are accounted for. But I'm quite confident this is correct. So, is everyone okay with this sort of logic? Everything here belongs inside a ship. I can hit a ship, I can ask if it's sunk, and I can create different kinds of ships. So submarine, aircraft, and so on. Is everyone okay with responsibility of a ship? Yes? Up here. Because I want to calculate if it's sunk. So I don't want to say, I don't want to flag say it's sunk when it's this. This method, when I ask if it's sunk, it's going to calculate if it's sunk. So it's going to say if the amount of hits is greater than or equal to the length of the ship, that means it's sunk. That's the rule that says it's sunk. So I'm going to work it out on the fly every single time, rather than have a variable that's been stored and to keep track of that. Right now, it's easier for me to work it out.
But maybe later on,
it could still ask the ship if it's sunk, so it'll still be able to go to each of the ship. Whether or not there's a variable inside there, there might be an argument for it later on. But right now, I'm quite happy with this, and it's minimal code. I don't have to have an extra variable to keep track of.
If that was an expensive operation, sunk, and it's going to be called lots of times, then you might use a variable to cache the value.
Mm-hmm.
It's quite right to do it this way in this instance.
Yeah, and by expensive operation, it's computationally hard. So if it takes me quite a while to figure out if it's sunk, I have to go off and check various different things, check the amount of water that's in there and see if that's greater than the capacity of the ship, and the weight of the ship and so on, and work out the buoyancy levels. I'll probably say it's a variable. But right now, it's quite simple calculation. But great question. So there's a few things that I might want to change about this. So hits, for example. Should I really be should I ever call this method hits outside of the class? What's going to be calling hits? So why should, well, outside of the class, the sunk's going to be calling it. So this method here, I'll create it so we can see hits and the reader. Should I be correct? What else is going to call it? What other class is going to call this method? Who cares how many times it's been hit?
Board.
Why does the board care?
Just points to the track of how many hits you have to order to know you won or not.
It just needs to know how many ships you've got and if they're sunk. So why does game need to know? I would say the way I'm thinking about it right now, only the ship needs to know. So I shouldn't. So this is based on the interface, and by interface I want to see like the publicly accessible methods. So when you go to string, for example, in IRB, you can only see the methods that I can use on a string. I can use all of these methods, there are no methods that are there that help other methods to work out, how to do things. It's only methods that I can directly call on it. So the only thing that's going to be using hits shouldn't be anything from the outside world. It should just be the ship. I think for now, I think that makes sense. So I'm only using this method here, hits, inside sunk to work out if it's sunk. So only the ship cares about that. So right now, if I do ship.methods, I'm going to see this method hits, but no one else cares. And if we have hundreds and thousands of methods, it might be quite hard to see all the methods in there just to find out the few methods that you need. So really, I only want to have accessible to my ship the methods that I'm likely to use from the outside world, and that is just hit a ship and find out if it's sunk or not. I only need 2 methods from the outside world. So what I would want to do here is create that method private. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what this looks like. I'm going to say require lib. I'm going to do I'm going to do. Oh, you got me nervous now.
Sorry.
Ship.methods. I can find out its length, its hits, its hit, if it's sunk, and a few others that come with a type of class. But really, I don't want to see how many times it's been hit. I may not even want to see its length. I might not need that from the outside world. I might do when placing a ship. I might need to find out the size of it. So I'll probably keep that one. That's quite useful. But I certainly don't need to know. I don't need anything to know how many hits it's got. I just need to hit it, and then you'll know if it's sunk. It's the only 2 bits of information I want to see from the outside world. So what I'll do here, I'll write private, and I'll move this down. Yeah, so if I go to IRB, require ship, now do ship.methods. Actually, it should be private. Yep. So now I can't figure out how many hits it's got. So this is now private. Nothing else can ask that question. Only.
Beautiful. Why would it not ask itself that question?
Sorry?
How would it ask itself that question?
It can still use the methods internally. This is, however, a hard test. Because on the left, our ship_spec is the outside world. This is, something asking it how many hits it's got. And in this test here, I'm saying I expect ship.hits to equal 1. I can't do this operation. This method no longer exists. I can't see that method. So when I run RC now, I'm going to expect that to fail. Failed. It's actually been a lot kinder than what it needs to be. It says private method hits. So it acknowledges that it exists, but it says it's a private method, and we shouldn't be able to call that. So how can we get around this? This is more of a coder's trick rather than good practice. I'm talking directly to, you're right to a certain extent, I'm talking directly to the instance of ship here. I'm calling this method hits, but this isn't a publicly accessible method. So if we go to any class, I'm going to go to IRB again, string for example, and then it will be public again. But I don't want it to be public. I don't want to be able to call it from the outside world. I can call this sort method just to make it a bit easier for me. Pretty much every, I say every method that inherits from basic objects, I think it is, has this method send. So this, inside every single class, you have a method send. So if I go one.send, the name of the method as a symbol plus, and the argument I want to pass it, 1, what's this going to equal? What's this going to, yeah, so I'm doing 1, send the method plus as a symbol with this argument 1, or I could say send, just so we don't pass in the arguments. Yeah. I think I'm disappearing off every end. Is that better? So if I do, you want to see? Oh, the return value. Sorry. There you go. So if I ask it's odd, it's going to say true and even. So I'm sending it a symbol. But more importantly, this method send is actually inside that class. It's inside every single class. So with this, I can call hits because it's inside the class. So we can access this method here because it's inside the same place. So here I can say ship.send hits. So I'm calling this method that's internal and asking it now to query that. Now it's going to equal 1. Okay.
So how is any method private?
They're not truly private. But what you really want is you want to be aware from the outside world. When people call methods, you want to show what interface people can call directly. You can call any method you want just by using the send. You can get around it. They're not private to like a safe, so you can lock it away and no one can access it from the outside world. It's private just so at a glance you can see what methods you can use, and it's really good practice to pay attention to that. So every time I look at a class for the first time, I sort of study its methods. I look over the methods. I go to Ruby docs to look at all the methods that I can use. Why would I want to see a method that I can't use that's internal? It just confuses me. And you should really be thinking about that. So you should try and make any method that's not being used by the outside world private. So if you can't call that method directly, if it doesn't make sense to be able to call that directly, then you should have that private. Are you okay with that?
I'm not okay with testing it. I would say that's absolutely not. But I totally agree with what you're saying about making it.
No, you kind of, so with this, I know that hitting it is going to make it sunk. I should test the cause of that. So it's internal for a reason. Go in, do whatever you need to do, but then come out the other side and just give me if that effect is correct. So really, you shouldn't actually test the hits method. But I was just trying to make that work.
Yeah, the important thing is that the ship has a hit method, and the other interface or element of the class is that if you hit it enough times, it syncs. How that class internally manages that is part of its internal implementation and not something that you should be testing, because technically you shouldn't know anything about it. If you see what I mean? But that, I think Steve was just showing that so you understand how methods work.
And just on the side of that, you wouldn't start with privates. You should build a class because you want to test drive a class. There could be a big calculation to work out the hits and so on, and you want to test drive that. So you should always test drive to get there, and then afterwards, when you're finished, or you think you're finished, then make the method private, and it might mean getting rid of some of the tests and rethinking your tests. You should be refactoring all the time. It's red-green refactor. So always go back through and refactor and say, why have I done this? Okay, now I need to change my test. Your test should probably be refactored more so than your actual code, just as an indication of refactoring. People think that tests are immutable and perfect, and I should only change the class here. I would say it's the opposite way around. Your test should be refactored the same, if not more, than the class that you're actually using.
So, to get that, do you put them private in the end?
In the end, yes. So you always want to say, this is what I want my class to look like from the outside world, and it's going to look something like this. I'm still not 100% happy with it, but I'll probably change it later on. Okay.
And then if you've made some of your methods private, and that's what's causing the test to fail, that's a good indicator that maybe take those tests out.
Maybe take the test out, yes. But make sure right now, so right now I've got this ship.sunk. I'm testing hit, and it's still sunk at the end of it. The fact that it calls hits to work out that it's sunk is fine, because I know that it did. I tested to make sure I got there, then I turned it private, so now I can probably just get rid of this test completely, if I wanted to. But it was no extra effort for me to have the send method in there. But this could potentially cause trouble later on when we work out a different way for it to be sunk. So proceed with caution, but right now it's such a small example, we could probably have either.
I think the other thing to bear in mind as well is that could be quite a brittle test now, because if another developer came along and saw that hits was a private method, they'd change it confidently, knowing that as a private method, nothing else should be relying upon it. But of course, it would then break the test because the test is calling essentially a private method.
So always write code for the next developer. It'll probably be you.
So yeah, so it's in effect more like an indicator that where it's going to pick up the code. So I don't follow this too much.
Exactly. But the benefits of having private methods far supersede the complications of testing. So it's nice to go to ship, view all its methods, and just know that's my way to interact with a ship. I shouldn't care about anything else. And I'm guessing right now you're building quite a lot of methods inside your board class or whatever else that aren't necessarily going to be called upon from the outside world. And by the outside world, I mean any of the other classes that interact with it. It's just to refactor and have some sort of end result for another method. Does anyone have any questions? Yes, exactly. So the class interface is I can create new submarine, aircraft, and so on. And the instance interface, so once you've got the object created, all I can do, additional to what I can do to a basic object, is hit it and sync it. So I've only got two methods on an instance of ship that I've created. Yeah, all I can do is sync it and ask if it's on, or hit it and ask if it's on. So hit it as many times as needed, and ask the length.
So I'm struggling with the concept is position of the ship.
Mm-hmm.
I understand why you're saying
Mm-hmm.
But how then does, say, a GPS go, right, so the board task goes, right, I want to know the position of that ship. And then does it communicate with the ship, or does it just hold it within its own, say, instance, variable ship?
I would probably, once I've got a board, just like you would in the real game, I would place the ship on the board. Okay. So I'd have a method which says place ship on board. Then I would probably have a method that says give me all my ships. Or I can go through each cell and say, is there a cell on? Is there a ship on this particular cell? So A2, is there a ship here? Or what is the content of the ship? Is it is it a ship or is it water? What is it? And I can do that, and I can, based on all of that information, I can play the full game. So I realise a lot of you have gone down a completely different path than this. I've seen a lot of your code, and I know it's gone on a different avenue. So this might actually just distract you from your current direction. Some people are working on ways to make the ship and battleships work completely. I want you to implement your version of battleships. But I've just brought in I've just used this example to introduce class methods for this and private methods for any internal ones. I want you to be aware of it. If what you've created is completely different solution to battleships, don't feel like you have to implement this. Just take on the rules. I've said no magic numbers, and I've said try and keep your interface viewable. So take that on board. Don't necessarily change everything to pay attention to this, because I won't follow through with this. Tomorrow's lecture will be something else. Cool. Yeah.
With the single responsibility, we can player for the articles of logic. So the player has a list of cells that they have all the code receive that. Go to the look or a ship, then go to map and go click the list, and then go back up the chain. Go tell the player what it was. Is that okay doing the down chain?
No, yes. So if I ask, just to bring it in sort of like a general, if I ask you, are you going to eat lunch today? I expect you to tell me yes. I don't want someone else coming to me and saying yes, because that will confuse the hell out of me. Like, why are they saying yes to me? So it loses context. So if I ask a question, I expect that particular method to answer. If that has to go and ask something else to answer and so on, let it do that, and that should be tested in its own right. But I expect to ask a method and get an answer back. I don't want that answer coming from somewhere else, because that could confuse me.
Is it good practice to do it? So, like, have this, for example, this ship ask which position it is and return the position to the player.
Then why wouldn't the player ask? Why would the player ask the ship where it is when the ship has to ask the board? The player could just ask the board.
Yeah.
So, but would it be possible if I don't know whether there is another instance, another class who could answer the question directly? Is it okay to ask maybe the ship, and then if the answer left from the ship, the ship has to ask someone else? Just for encapsulation reasons, maybe.
I would say you're probably better off. So a player should be able to ask the board questions. I would say it makes more sense for the player to ask the board where that particular ship is.
But if I have already communication
Yeah.
between player and board, and I don't want to have another class interacting with the player, how do we do this?
I mean, I think one way to try and imagine it is imagine the game being played. If I took the ship off the board and gave it to you, could you then ask the ship where it is on the board? So if you think about it in a real world situation, the ship doesn't, it doesn't embody the principle of where it is on the board. It's only when it's on the board that it has a position, and therefore its position is kind of relative to the board. So it's the board really that owns that relationship. So you would ask the board. The only way you can know where the ship is to look at the board. Do you see what I mean? So yeah, but within the context of the game, it doesn't have a position on the board anymore, and that's the only thing that's really relevant. So sometimes, and you very often get stuck between a decision as to where to put a responsibility. And often the program will work perfectly well either way. And then pragmatically, you might just say, do you know what, I'm going to stick it there. But often, if you just try and conceptualize something as a real-world scenario, it helps you to decide where those responsibilities go.
Okay. Awesome. All right, time's up.
One bit of aspect magic that I just want to tell you about. Where you've got expect ship.sunk to equal false, you could put expect ship to be sunk.
Oh yes.
Which is just for readability. It's quite a nice little aspect bit of magic.
It works the same. So expect ship to be sunk. Yes. So this will actually. So if I did ship to be sunk, it feels weird. Run it now, it will say undefined method sunk ? So it puts the question mark when you say to be something. Whatever the next word is after the underscore, it will automatically put a just make it a little bit more readable. It will put a question mark under it afterwards for you. Wow. Copy.
I just like that. I think it's quite sweet.
Yeah. Same as that. This will be. Okay. Want to be sunk. That's a weird error. Ship equals S. Name error.
Oh, you've got a typo.
Where? Okay. Thank you. We don't need that line now.
Got it. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, man.
It was just a keyboard.
What's going on? Okay, probably don't. I did need to create that ship then, so I said ship. Oh, you don't have to watch this, I'm embarrassing myself now. We've got green test, so everything's good. Thank you very much, guys. Cheers. I'm just going to try and finish it.